right. We're going to get into some more complicated expressions using something called DeMorgan's laws. Now, earlier I said, hey, don't memorize these because you can just logic them out. And, it was too long of a list to just memorize everything. But these are a little bit complicated, but they're also pretty easy to memorize. So after we get, when I show you the result, I would go ahead and memorize those. So real quick, we know that we have 4 different possibilities for our 2 events. Okay, they could be true and true, true and false, false and true, or false and false. Okay, and we can negate those real quick. I'm just doing the opposites here, and I'm doing the opposites here. Okay. And then we can do the and. So and is false in all of these situations, except for where they're both true. Okay, so true and true, we've got true, everything else is false. So here's what DeMorgan's law does. It asks, how can we negate an and statement? Is there a way to rewrite that? I'm going to try to do not Q and R. Well, not Q and R is just going to have the opposite values from here. So it's going to be false if they're both true, and it's going to be true otherwise. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to achieve right here. What I want you to do for a minute is I want you to ignore these guys and these guys. Okay, let's look at these nots and let's look at this guy right here. What does this guy have to do with this? Well, this guy seems to only be false when these 2 guys are false. But if we have any truths at all, this is true. That should sound familiar. Was there a situation earlier where it could only be false if they were both false? Well, that's an or statement. So if I say not Q or not R, that should be equivalent here. So false or false gives me false. False or true gives me true. True or false gives me true. True or true gives me true. So these 2 guys right here are logically equivalent. Okay, and this is what DeMorgan's law tells us. Okay, now this may feel like a lot to remember. Here's how I remember it. I treat it like it's distributing, like we're distributing a not. So not Q, not R, and when we negate the and, it turns into an or. That's not really what's going on there, but for memorization purposes, that's kind of how I remember it. Okay, so let me give you another example of this law in action. Let's say I had not A not A and not B. So what I would do, I would negate the A, I would turn this into an or, and I would negate the not B and turn it into B. Do you see how this statement is much simpler than this statement? Okay, that's going to make your code easier to read. It's going to make it easier to not make mistakes, basically. Okay, so that is the first half of DeMorgan's laws. Now, the other thing we're going to try to do is we're going to try to negate an or statement. Now, just gut feeling, you might have a guess of what this is going to be. let's start with our regular OR statement. So again, true, 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 false, false, true, false, false. This OR statement will be true, 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 false. So when we negate this OR statement, it's going to give us false, 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 true. Now again, let's cheat and look at these guys and these guys right here. Okay, this seems to only be true when these are both true. That should sound familiar. That's an and statement. It was only our and statements that were true when both of them are true. So this is going to be equivalent to not Q and not R. Did you figure that out a minute ago? Okay. If you did, good guess. So let's double check. So false and false is going to be false. False and true is false. True and false is false. True and true is true. So these two are logically equivalent. Again, you can pretend like you're distributing this negative. So not Q, or sorry, not negative, that's negation. Not Q and not R. So again, if I had a situation where I had not A or B, I could rewrite this as A and not B. Again, we could logic these out, but it takes a little while. Here's how you can think about this logically. If we've got the statement Q or R, okay, the only way that could not be true is if both of them are false. And that's what this is saying, is that both of our original statements are false. That and. So the first guy is the opposite of what it was. The second guy is the opposite of what it was. And both of them had to be false for the original guy to be true. Or for the original guy to be false. All right. That's DeMorgan's laws. Make sure you learn those.